How's everybody doing? Brian Meter, we are here at the Guitar Sanctuary
Yes, we are.
in beautiful Adriatica, McKinney. And I think we're going to talk about some tone and some pedals today. We might have the opportunity to have some questions from viewers.
Absolutely. If you're online and you're watching, you can send your questions in for Andy and all of his amazing tones and the gear he's using, and we can get him right to you.
All right, so maybe we should start because the general type of questions I'll get about the board, just basically what's on it and how I'm running things. You think that'd be a good place to start, Brian?
Absolutely.
So, if you know me like I think you might, I've been using the Mesa Boogie Lone Star as my main amplifier since about 2005. So that's about when they first released it. In fact, I had one of the early prototypes, thanks to Steve Mueller here in Frisco, Texas. It's handy to have a neighbor that's one of the top crew at Mesa, so I was privy to some of the early pieces along the way. And it's just something that really resonated with me, and I've been using it ever since. So, and how I'm running it today is basically the Lone Star, loud and clean, or relatively loud. We're in a room where I need to speak as well. But I'm also slaving through my effects loop into the effects return of another Lone Star, so it's kind of a stereo image, right? One main preamp tone being split stereo between the two amps. And so if I'll play for you just the clean channel minus anything in front of it. So this is, that's just the straight Lone Star. So at this volume, it's pretty low, but a nice, really full spectrum and dynamic tone. But the first thing always in my chain as far as clean sounds, I have a signature Carl Martin compressor. It's a dual compressor, meaning that I can have two different presets at any given time. So I've got it set for really more of, not so much a compressor, but more of a loud boost. Oh, there it is. Just so happen to have it, oh, hey, we could do this preset like this, something like this. So there's two settings you can use. They share the two functions of threshold and release. But you can have, one mild compression and one extreme compression, and I'll give you an example of that. So this is an example of my basic clean sound. And how I'm using that is really to push the front end of the Lone Star quite a bit. So you can hear that clean sound is now kind of on the edge of... If I turn it off, and then on. So that should give you a little clue about how hot I'm running the output of that Carl Martin, and that's a big part of that particular tone that I get. So if that's for basic kind of cleanish stuff, I will then hit the front end of that Carl Martin with an exotic RC booster. And one of the ways that I'm utilizing that is to give it a little bit of extra top end and to actually scoop a bit of the bass out, because the Lone Star does have a really nice, beautiful low end. But sometimes if I'm pushing the front end, I want to thin that out a little bit. So just the Carl Martin. Now adding the RC before the Carl Martin. And I use that on a lot of the kind of neck pickup clean ballad stuff, like let's see. So it gives it, with that RC, kind of common thought in the past for me, I might have thought I would add additional gain pedals after a compressor. But by happy accident, when I started using my BB preamp back many years ago, I sense a Brian Meter about to come onto the scene. As if on magic. Yeah, just because of the way my rig was set up at the time, the compressor was back on top of my amp via connections there, and I was sending the BB into that, and I really loved the tone of it, so I just kind of stuck with it. So there can be general guidelines and rules, but then if it sounds right, it is right. So that should be your guiding force no matter what. So in this case too, that's where the RC ended up. I like the sound of it before that Carl Martin circuit, right? But it gives me the ability, like I say, to trim the low end a little bit and to add a little bit of crystal top while boosting a smidge, right? So I can, like. And so many of my more ballady kind of tunes kind of live in that tone, right? Then also, like we just had on the scene there, that's, let's see if I can find it. A preset. Here's a preset with, this is my signature exotic BB preamp running into the front of the Carl Martin. So this is going to be more of this is a more aggressive broken up tone, but it's, again, what I like to use on the neck pickup. So there's an example of a little bit more aggressive neck pickup bluesy tone. And essentials from there are, of course, now if I'm looking for my full-on, what I would call my actual lead tone, I've been so happy to work with Josh over at JHS and to develop what became the AT pedal. Thank you, Brian Meter. And actually, it's Brian Meter who I have very much to thank for me being aware of the JHS company. Brian is very much he's the magic shop owner on Pee-wee's Big Adventure.
The pusher.
He's the pusher. You go in and go, okay, Pee-wee, we got the new, disappearing ink or whatever. Brian's that guy. When I come to the Guitar Sanctuary, I'm so fortunate to have this amazing shop nearby where I live. And when something new and cool is kind of coming on the scene, Brian's my kind of filter. So he can go, hey, you should check this out. I know he knows my taste. He knows. It's like the guy, when you used to go to your record store growing up and you'd walk in and they go, oh, you like this, so I know you're going to dig this, right? So he's that guy for me. And so he turned me on to a pedal called the Angry Charlie many years ago. And it slowly kind of worked its way into my signal chain. As things sometimes do, you might have a way of working for years that works, but then out of necessity, sometimes things change up. Next thing you know, I'm really loving that pedal. Then I introduced myself to Josh at the NAMM show, and so we decided to collaborate and change some things about that circuit that I loved, and that's where we ended up with the original AT pedal. Now we have the AT Plus, where I've added a stage of gain, basically like an old TS-808 in front of it as a little extra boost when need be. But let me give you an example of that tone, and that's, again, anytime you see me on a bridge pickup, in general, that's going to be the tone that you're hearing. It's going to be a loud and clean amp with the JHS signature AT pedal. And so here again is that's the amp tone. I hit the magic button. Whatever that was an interesting tone. Sometimes overtones happen that you don't anticipate. That was kind of cool. So clearly there's lots of nice gain, but I'm able to keep it. It's got a really great kind of presence and treble circuit where I can really dial in the top end. Because when you're dealing with distortion and high gain lead tones, one of the regular side effects is a buzzy kind of trebly top end, right? allows me to straddle what I call the precipice of having enough gain to where it gives you the ease of playing, but then you also have a warm, controlled sound. So this pedal allows me to dial in just the right amount of gain, but keep the articulation so you have a clarity. So getting some nice harmonic content is easy, but yet it's not too mushy, and you can really dial in that treble. So it's a real pleasant, hopefully. I'm going for a pleasant tone. Maybe it's not pleasant to some, but those are the basic components, and there's some special, like, I've got a POG for low octave. I've got a beautiful pedal from Brazil, a company called G&I, and I use their Octavia circuit. It's called an Octafuzz. And from Greece, not the movie, the country, is the Love pedal. It's called Retro Vibe by the Jam pedal company. Real nice, chewy kind of univibe sound.
So Andy,
those are the basics. Okay, so let's.
So in some of the questions we have coming through with our TrueFire stream, obviously we're doing this for our good friends at TrueFire.
Yes.
This is part of their egg hunt promo that's going on for April.
Cool.
With all of what's going on with COVID-19 and all the chaos, it's one of the great times to be diving deep into cool guitar lessons and furthering what you're doing learning-wise and that kind of thing. And of course, you're one of TrueFire's instructors.
Sure.
You've got, I guess, 3 courses now up with
At
TrueFire?
least, yeah. There's one that's called Electric Expression, which is kind of a general overview of my playing. I think it's about 5 hours of content and teaching. And then I did one that's kind of blues-based, probably called Blues Expression. I forget the title. But I think the one I'm most proud of is one called Melodic Muse, where so many times the questions I get are based on the melodic, kind of component of my playing, and it really kind of got me to dig deep about, okay, where does melody come from, and what is that about the way that I play, and what influences me to play in that way? And so I really came up with what I think is a pretty cool way of talking about and figuring out a way of kind of, showing and teaching that to people and how they can improve, because everybody, we all want to know scales and all the information, but okay, then what do we do with it? How are we going to utilize this information and put it out there in hopefully a musical context? So that particular lesson I was very proud of.
So, and obviously there's tons of great content out there from you and from, lots of players and things. And so as part of this promo that they're doing with the Egg Hunt, as people are going on and doing lessons and diving deep into your courses and things, they can find the eggs.
Oh, okay.
And they get to earn points and that
nice.
kind of things. And they're going to get to win super cool prizes, including one of the prizes is one of Andy's new signature ATZ 100 guitars.
They didn't tell me they were giving my actual guitar away, but what the heck? Oh, okay, I have a spare, it's okay.
And it is signed by Andy.
That's me.
On the back of the headstock as well.
I can give you a letter of authenticity.
With it, so this is one of the cool things that people can get to
That's
win
pretty
from
cool.
this whole promo. But I find it interesting as you were talking about all your different drive stages. I think different than a lot of players, you're really approaching what you're doing drive-wise a lot based on where you are on the guitar and what you're doing pickup-wise on the guitar. So maybe you could talk a little bit about how you approach like your normal AT100 that has the full humbucker in the bridge versus your new ATZ with the 3 rails. And how you kind of approach drive stages a little differently based on which guitar you're doing.
Yeah, that's an ongoing thing. A little shout out to TrueFire, because that's kind of what has gotten me started on more of a teaching part of my career, and they've made it so easy for me to come in and try to communicate things that I've kind of learned over my 50 plus years of playing. And that's been really great. It's been fun for me because I'm learning as much as I am from the teaching as I hope the students are. But also, another great benefit is I have access, being a member of their team, I have access to all their videos. So many of my heroes are on there. You've got Robin Ford creating so much great content, and Larry Carlton, and great blues players like Josh Smith, and you've got Matt Schofield. It's just amazing the amount of stuff there is at any point in your playing career. There's always so much more to learn, and we are blessed to be at a time where it's so readily available for all of us to be able to benefit from. And now we do have a little bit extra time, however, whatever the circumstance may be. It's been a great time for me. I've been learning so much too. And I subscribe to different people's channels and such, so it's a beautiful time. But getting to Brian's question, yes, every pickup and sound may be an exclusive type of setting on my board in order to really get the sound that I'm hearing. I spoke earlier about the neck pickup and how I'll have, maybe a bit of compression, maybe the BB, maybe the RC for, some of the milder tones, right? Not that I won't use those settings for maybe, a jangly. I've got a coil tap on my humbucker, so I can get more of a. Which, I'm getting at a place where it's, emulating a little bit of what a single coil would sound like. But another issue that I have a lot is that a lot of times if I get a really nice lead tone with my humbucker, right, in the bridge, that may not work quite as well with that same tone on the neck pickup. Not a bad sound, but again, I think it's a little muddy, so I'll go to one of these other, like more the BB kind of tone where it's. But that's not going to sound great on the bridge. So that's where a lot of these decisions are coming in. What's gonna serve that pickup in the tone that I'm hearing. What is the benchmark in my head that I'm going for, right? And so it doesn't change that drastically when I go to this guitar. The reason I love the ATZ 100 so much is the roasted maple kind of has a certain sound to it and feel to it, and it also gave me the luxury of going with an actual single coil type pickup, even though those are DiMarzio Cruisers, which are here in my neck and middle, but it decidedly a bit more single coil sounding than when I'm coil tapping that, right? So maybe we'll plug that in a minute and get to that. But that's the general ethos. My grail will be when I finally find a tone circuit where I can really get the right bridge lead pickup sound, but also have that speak well on the neck. And I think I got away with it a bit more in the 80s, but my tone was much brighter back then. So once I started going down the path of wanting to get a really pleasing, warm, bridge pickup tone, then that didn't serve the neck pickup quite as well. Whereas the brighter tone, maybe it would have spoke better, right? Hope that kind of answers part of that.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And I think sometimes maybe when people see a board like yours with the size and think like, man, what is he using all those drives for, that kind of thing, they're not necessarily understanding that sometimes it's your staging depending on what you need for a particular sound or a particular voicing on the pickup.
That's a really great point, and it's true. I mean, I could do fairly well with a cable into an amp. If I set the amp, with a couple of sounds I really dig, and that's a valid way. Brian, you're a player where that's kind of your normal way of functioning. But there is quite a palette that when it gets down to playing the music that I want to play, there's quite a disparate range of tones that are really going to be from the mild to the mid to the over the top, And so I figure, why not? The technology's here, and I'm still very much an amp and pedal guy. There's obviously a lot of technology, and I think it's all beautiful. Where, there's easier ways of doing this, as far as condensing it into modeling gear and all that. But I don't think all that's there yet. But I don't certainly disparage people that embrace that technology, because it is extremely useful, and especially for places where you need to play quietly. I've just recently got into some speaker emulators that I'm really kind of digging. Mesa's got a new one called the Cabclone IR Plus, and I'll do a demo on that soon, because it's really, really good. So little by little, but this is still fun, man. This is still the way I like to go about.
Well, and talk about, I know you're doing some, like a lot of artists right now during the pandemic, you're doing a lot of things in the online arena to get your music out to your fans and kind of keep playing and doing stuff. And I know you're doing some shows on Stage It.
Yeah.
I know you've got 2 of them coming up tomorrow.
That's right.
Is it a similar kind of approach when you're going live in for the Stage It stuff? Are you micing cabinets and doing that stuff too?
I'm quite surprised and thrilled at the quality that we're able to get on an online streaming format. So it's basically, I'm broadcasting from my studio. So I've got 2 rectifier, 2 12 cabinets in the room, separated by a nice isolated door where I can mic up my cabs. So I'm running the exact same setup I'm running here. I've got stereo Lone Stars feeding two 12 cabs, and my usual, I've got a couple of 57s running through Neve preamps into the mixer, then into the audio interface. So I think what I'm broadcasting is literally what I hear in my studio. People are getting that same tone. And I've got backing tracks for my records, so I'm able to have a really nice produced sound. And the video's looking better and better as I get more savvy with cameras and all that. But I'm doing 2 shows tomorrow, Central Time at 2 p.m. and 8 p.m. So I'm going to do the entire Sgt. Pepper record at 2 o'clock, start to finish, play through the whole record. And at 8 o'clock, I'm doing an all-request show. So if you want to go to stageit.com and just pipe in my name, the shows will come up. But it's okay. So the thing about it, Brian, has been that it gives me a venue to be able to do concerts, because I can't go out and do concerts now. But what's been great is that there's actually people, and you communicate with me. I can see your comments. So you've got a camera on me, I'm playing for you, but I see all your comments, and people are interacting with me, but they're also interacting with each other. So we're all kind of at this event in a unified way, like going to a concert at a time where we really can't, go out and be social in that way. This is very much a really nice, stand-in for that kind of feeling. And people are feeling it. You go through and look at the comments as things are happening. It's really kind of awesome. Yeah, and then when I make mistakes, they're all like going, "Oh, it clams," or if the sound's nice, they go, "Oh, man, that tone," So it's a really kind of cool way and then they're chatting with each other. So it's
well,
beautiful.
I think that if we all had been able to do that type of interaction with some of our favorite heroes when we were coming up, playing, that would have been super cool.
Well, you can. I mean, what's cool is that, Robin does a live stream every Sunday where he's taking questions and hanging out, and it is kind of a beautiful time in that way, So through this adversity, we're figuring out ways of getting through, right?
One of the people that's watching the video asked, let's see here, what's the best way to nail lead timing? Is there an exercise that you like?
Well, lead timing is all timing. I mean, it's rhythm timing, music timing. So where does time come from, and how do you fortify that? I was fortunate at a very, very young age that I had one of my older brothers played guitar, but he also played drums. So I always had a pair of broken drumsticks that he would discard, and I was always playing. I was playing on my bedspread, basically on my bed, playing along the Beatle records, not realizing that what I was doing was really fortifying my sense of time. But then since the early days like that, I realized that even subconsciously through time, I was always, if I was walking down the street, I had a groove in my head, and I was maybe walking in time or tapping to it. But I also very much physically participate in music. If there's music happening, why not, if you're not bugging anybody, why not keep time to that? Because it's not just about your right hand, your left hand guitar string. It's what's happening in your whole body, I feel. There's some that like to practice without moving, but I'm very much even if there's no other time happening, I'm keeping it. There'll be a body part moving. There'll be either teeth, clenching in time. So it's something that you can physically, do all day. Again, at the risk of annoying your people nearby you, but why not participate rhythmically in your life? And so the more you do that, the more I think you can get that to kind of come through in your playing, on a basis where you don't have to think about it. But clearly, when you're practicing, my metronome when I was a kid was my records. The records I was playing along with. I was playing along with Kiss records or Rod Stewart or Peter Frampton, and then eventually Rush and Foghat, all the 70s rock. So I didn't have a metronome, but I had a record player, and relatively, I suppose the drummer would have a good time. And that was my metronome. But now there's plenty of apps to play with, either rhythm tracks or drum machines. And I recommend doing that on a regular basis, or if you're playing scales. Why not have that metronome going to really make sure you're locking in? Are we picking up the foot? Foot mic, like. That's Paul McCartney and his wingtips. I thought that was a metronome growing up. I really thought, but you see there's video footage of him doing a take, and he's got these big old wingtip shoes on. That's his foot. Isn't that crazy? Talk about great time, right? Paul had very good time. So it does come more naturally to some, but it can be certainly worked on. But live a rhythmic life, you know.
We've got some folks on from Slovenia.
Hello, Slovenia.
We've got some folks on from the Czech Republic.
Hello, check 1 2.
So we hope everybody is enjoying this kind of moment to kind of get away from all of this kind of chaos. We have a question from Sean asking, what was it like playing with Martin Miller?
Oh man, Martin and I, when was the first time we played? I think we played in a hotel room and we played Bright Size Life together. That was the first time. We hooked up in Germany. I was on a clinic tour, and I was very aware of his playing already, as he and Tom Quayle had been doing quite a lot of cool videos. And so I was like, man, this guy's incredible. What a great facility and great vocabulary. And so he was contacted to do an interview with me for one of the German distributors. So we hung out. We had a great time, but it might have been earlier that day or the night before when we first kind of hooked up at the hotel, you know, nearby the gig we were going to be doing. And we just said, let's get together and play. And so we played some Athenian, and it just went beautifully. And I think we might even have played some on the video that he interviewed me at. I'm sure it's on YouTube somewhere. But obviously, he's probably referencing when we did the sessions with his band. You know, he's been doing this great series of covers on YouTube, and he contacted me about doing a few songs, and he picked the tunes. And I believe it was Electric Gypsy, Chromosome by Mike Stern, and Still Got the Blues, which I think that one got a lot of attention. Big Gary Moore fan. Not easy shoes to attempt to even get close to filling. So. But he and his band are all incredible musicians. I really love his band. His drummer Alex is amazing. Benny on the bass, Key's great. And Martin's doing a great job singing and playing. And I think it's really great what he's doing to not just be flash guitar guy. He's making some music and doing cover tunes that appeal to quite a few people. So yeah, kudos to Martin. Love the guy. Love his playing. And hopefully we'll do more in the future. I would do a tour with his band. We should go do a dual tour sometime.
Well, along those lines, we've had the privilege here at the Sanctuary of seeing you sit in with a bunch of great players as they've come through town. Fortunately, you're local, and so when we have amazing players here, we get these great opportunities. But, I would have the question, like for you, how do you approach sitting in or jamming with somebody else like that musically? Because obviously there's some right ways to do it and some wrong ways to do it that happen from time to time.
Yeah.
But how would you describe your approach if you have that opportunity, or somebody says, hey, come down to the gig and come sit in, or come play? Is there some stuff you think of?
Great question. Well, the first thing is really paramount is volume knob and a sense of what's appropriate. That's kind of how I function in any music. I want to contribute if I can, lay out if nothing's needed, and then play what's right in the moment. If you get into a situation where you're rocking out with and trading licks, if you go over the top, and maybe that's appropriate in that moment. But a lot of times it's like playing less or not playing at all is equally and as valid and sometimes more appreciated. I've been on stage, with both kinds of players where there might be a player that it could be a world-class, amazing player, but if they're not hip to turning down while the other guy's playing, it's not as much fun. You want to make sure that, if you're not soloing, and who's the focal point? Is it the vocalist? Is it the other soloist? Make sure that they're the loudest thing on stage and that you're able to hear what they're doing. So what you're doing is not getting in the way and hopefully being more supportive. It's just, in general, the best thing you can do is just, be as considerate to the situation and the other players as you can be, and that just goes for life in general. I put that out there. but it's a good way to live, and it's a good way to really get along musically. I'll never forget one of the early times I sat in with G3. It was at Bass Hall in Fort Worth, and it was John Petrucci and C. Vai and Satriani, of course. And they've been really gracious and invite me to play when I come. And there you go. What are you going to play after they've been playing all night? And what am I going to do? So you have to get past that mindset. You have to realize that just being yourself is okay. You don't have to be them. They're already the best them that we need, right? Nobody's going to outdo Joe or Steve or Petrucci, right? So just getting comfortable with, just play the way I play. But also when somebody else was playing, either I was not playing or I turned around to the drummer, John Cunaberti, I think, was playing at the time, and would just make sure I was grooving with him. And he gave me the best compliment after the game. He says, "Man, you were welcome to play with us anytime. You're the first guy to come play rhythm." I was like, it's an idea, right? It's like, okay, whatever's going on, you lay out or add to so you're not detracting. If that makes sense. But that's a great question, and I hope that people are more aware of these things.
We've got a few more countries checking in. We've got a couple folks from Italy.
Wow. Buongiorno.
From Norway.
Hello.
From the Netherlands. A couple folks from the Netherlands. And then way up in Cape
Decker.
Cod,
Cape
which is
Cod?
kind of like another country. But,
It is kind of another country.
with that. Lukdor, I hope I'm pronouncing you right, Lukdor, says, how would Andy approach a modern blues?
Is there a modern blues? What is modern blues? I don't. Is he just talking about a certain chord progression? Or? Nothing really modern, but. I'm not sure if that's the question, but I played anyway. Yeah. That was just it was blues with a couple extra chords put in. But yeah, I love playing blues, and I greatly admire Eric Gales, and I talked about Josh Smith, and I talked about Matt Schofield. But Larry and Carlton and Robin are two guys that I learned so much from. I mean, you go back and you get the 40s, 50s, and 60s, original cats, and you got to go back to that. But it's loving what that did for Robin and Larry, and where they went with that, and how they took that and melded some jazz, and like the way Robin played with the Yellow Jackets early on, and his early playing with Jimmy Witherspoon is just fully formed greatness. But he's continued, he's another guy too that's continued to grow somehow in kind of that format in a way that is so expressive and just has seemingly endless things to say, with that vocabulary. It's really inspiring. So they're all big influences on me, even though I'm not really a blues player. It is a factor in no matter what I do. Jazz is, blues is, and then Ace Frehley is too. It's like it all somehow gets in there together and comes out in the way that I play.
So obviously there's a lot of the players that you mentioned that everybody's really familiar with. Is there somebody that inspires you or that you've listened to that may not be as on the tip of tongue for a lot of players that you might think like, man, people should be aware of this person or this player or somebody that they should be hip to or go check out? Yeah,
that's an interesting question, because I think somebody asked me that in a Skype lesson yesterday. And I kind of struggled. Like, I think all the guys that I really admire are the same people that everybody's pretty aware of. There's some guys that aren't as cutting, as far as, like, everybody talks about Wes Montgomery and George Benson, but I love Barney Kessel. He's a guy that just played in such a rootsy, dirty, bluesy way. I just enjoyed and really resonated with the way he played. Oscar Peterson, if you're a guitar player, you haven't checked out players like Oscar Peterson on piano and different instruments. It's so valuable, and Charlie Parker or Cannonball on sax. There's so much phrasing and time and feel you can get from somebody not playing the instrument that you're playing that is such a valuable thing to get into, so that, we all certainly emulate all our guitar heroes, but, why not get the influence in other musical applications? And if I can think of any cool guitar player, I always talk about Eric Gales and Derek Trucks being my favorite new guys. I think they're still under 50 anyway. But there are so many talented players out there, and I'm guilty of not keeping up with all of it. Again, because I tend to be kind of centric on what I'm up to, but I do love hearing so many young players coming up. And you see it all over YouTube and Instagram. The abilities are happening at such a young age, and so okay, what can we do with that ability? Hopefully, the goal will eventually be making some beautiful music.
Well, like one of our favorite moments with you here at the Sanctuary is the shows you've done with Mimi Fox.
Oh man, yeah.
Which, for the people that have come to see you here before regularly, puts you in a whole different element and different light, but just as cool and just as different. And it's a cool melding of styles.
It's humbling working with Mimi because she's a lifelong jazz musician, and I aspire to play jazz, and I continually, work towards those goals. It's nice to have goals, right? So it's nice for me to sit alongside her as being the experienced, jazz musician that she is, and try to hold my own. It's not easy because, she'll bowl you over. And she's a great teacher too. She's done some great courses on TrueFire that I enjoy quite a bit. So she makes me laugh. She's a very sharp, witty person, but an incredible musician. So I highly recommend checking out her lessons and her records. In fact, I played on her most recent release called This Bird Still Flies, I think it's called. One of her songs, and it's an all acoustic record. So she loaned me her old, what was an old Guild acoustic? Just sounded beautiful. So she and I do an acoustic duet, and it's nice, man. She writes great tunes, and with great musical moments with her. She's got a great energy. Her time is fantastic, yeah.
So Tim from Detroit asks, how does Andy approach guitar songwriting, i.e. song structure, how does the song start, etc.? Do you have a kind of specific way you approach it, or is it just, how the song comes to you?
Yeah, I talk a lot about this in Melodic Muse, actually, that TrueFire course I mentioned earlier. It's more of I've certainly at a certain point, I started off self-taught, but eventually I did go to music school and I learned, I worked on theory and all that, even though I'd kind of, by learning, when you learn yourself, you're kind of teaching yourself some of these things that you start to recognize. So, I learned the proper terminology, but then you learn devices and you learn structure and how to ABA, whatever, analyze every song that's ever written. But I think it's really great songwriting just comes from the instinct of what you want to hear. And that's something that I talk about called the auralect. It's kind of your ear's intelligence, and that comes from, again, I could sit and analyze, okay, well, I'm going to have an intro, and then I want to do this, I'll have an A section, B, and repeat. But it's more of like, the more you do it, the more your ear's just going to guide you and let you know that, we don't need another A section. Let's do a different thing here. Let's have a different section. So really, the best way to learn that and develop that instinct is to learn a lot of songs, and that's the point I'm always, the touchstone for me always bringing up is the Beatles and how they became such great songwriters. Wasn't that they learned structure or thought about structure no, they just instinctually loved this music and learned not only all the rock and roll that was happening late 50s, early 60s, then they were learning show tunes that was in their parents' record collection. And there's all kinds of different chord progressions with that was not part of rock at the time, but they started taking those things, again, not knowing that it was a 2-5, 2-5 to the 4 chord. And for me to you, dominant 2 chord, 5, augmented. Nobody was writing like that on guitar, but they both played a bit of piano and were learning these tunes. So it was that voracious appetite as a student of songs. Again, it wasn't a class or they didn't have to get a book. It was, here's the music now. And so the more they took in, and this is why I'm convinced that if as a soloist or as a writer, I think we're just trying to create some of the things that we've loved in the past that we've taken in. We have a bit of a musical library, I think, that stores so many great things that has touched us in a certain way. And so I think we're trying to rise to that level of, oh, my favorite guitar soloist, I want to sound like as great as Eric Johnson or Stevie Ray or whoever. You'll never reach it, you know, but it's those goalposts, and musically too. Well, God Only Knows, or, you know, Eleanor Rigby, what are some of your favorite songs? Why does that touch you so much? Well, learn the song, you know, and kind of start to understand, you know, why that note makes you feel a certain way over that chord, and where did he go after the chorus section, and you know, it's all those things. So it's a long answer to a very simple question, but there's no simple answer. There's no one way of doing it. It's just I'm in a place now where, luckily, if I have a smidge of an idea, it might be a melody I'm singing driving down the road, or pick up a guitar without the brain kicking in too much. Sometimes things happen, right? And you're just kind of inspired to, oh, I think that should be something. Get out the voice memo, bags of cassettes from all the years of all these ideas piling up. But it's, you know, it's a process. You can make an exercise out of it, but I prefer to have the actual inspiration, you know?
Well, along those lines, I mean, there's a lot of people that know you from your Danger Danger days, or know you from your Andy Timmons band days. Yeah. But maybe the people outside the Dallas area don't know about things like the Pawn Kings or other bands you've played with. Yeah. And for a lot of younger players who are, you know, learning by themselves or things like that, how important would you say in your musical development has it been, like all of those years of gigging regularly with the Pawn Kings, or just being out playing with other musicians?
It started when I was 13. So I've never not been in a band since I was 13. And there's just always been an ongoing, some type of situation where I'm getting together with other people and making music. So at the young age, there was nothing more valuable than, all I had was my record player, my ear, a guitar, and these guys that were in high school. I was in grade school, and hey, we got a gig. Can you know, your older brother says you're pretty good. You know, come on, let's. And it was my own 8th grade graduation dance back in Evansville, Indiana. I was terrified. But anyway, that first gig, and we're playing 2112, and we did Strutter, we did Black Diamond, we did, you know, a lot of Ted Nugent, and so it's all about application. So in you know, especially in those days, you know, I could be learning the tunes and doing as well as I could, but it was getting together with the other players. And of course, if your goal is to play, you know, live, it's just handy to get that experience, because, you know, I'm still a relatively, you know, I was maybe a lot more shy when I was younger, but there's still that anxiousness. There's still that kind of, it's not quite stage fright anymore, but it's a very high level of expectation of myself that makes, I get very anxious and nervous, and you know, so, but flat out stage fright from the beginning, but the more you do it, you learn how to channel that into a positive energy. So even though I might be skittish before the gig, it's not that uncommon with musicians on all levels. You know, I hear plenty of stories. But then once you're up there, it's like, okay, now this is the time to relax. Now I can play. This is what I'm here to do. But that is absolutely paramount. If live performance is your goal, it's like anything else. It's like just being a great musician. You have to do it all the time. So the more that you can be in that situation, it really is invaluable for sure. And so yeah, even if I'm not in a touring, you know, international situation, if I'm home, I want to do some gigs. I've got my friend Nick Knurk here that we've done some duo gigs. We'll get together and play. We did a show once called The History of Guitar. We played some Django and some West and some Surf and some Beatles and some Hendrix and Stevie Ray. And it's any situation I get myself into that I'm going to be with players that are better than me or that can challenge me in certain ways. And the Pawn Kings were that way too. We just had a Wednesday night gig we do every Wednesday for several years. It was just a good excuse to be with friends and play some music. Hopefully people are out enjoying it, you know. I'm rambling. I had that Starbucks. No shortage of dialogue today. Sorry.
You know, we've been talking a lot. Maybe you can do a little bit of playing, and just let us hear some more of those amazing tones.
Well, I don't play. I only talk about playing. That's my thing. Well, any requests? Anybody have any requests?
Anybody? All right. So let's ask the YouTube community. Does anybody have a song that they want to play, or? Oh, we had a request for Lucy in the Sky with Diamonds.
All right. LSD for you kids out there. That was the Reader's Digest version, yeah. Well, I'm going to do the whole Sgt. Pepper record tomorrow on stage at 2 p.m. Central Time. I'll play the whole record start to finish, but I'll have my backing tracks, and it'll sound lovely. But hopefully that was okay for the Lucy requester.
We do have a request. Someone would like to hear a little bit of your ATZ 100.
Yes, good idea.
Because I guess they're hoping that when they win it,
yes, they will know.
They'll have a good idea of how it's going to sound.
Can I toss this to you real quick?
Absolutely.
Assist. Thank you, Brian.
Absolutely.
Give him a place on there. So essentially, my mic still okay? Yep. Okay. Essentially, this guitar, electronically and hardware is the same guitar. So the basic, I just blew a nail, by the way. So very similar in my neck and middle tones. The difference is going to be the. So there was a song on the last Andy Timmons Band record called "Theme from a Perfect World," but the song was called "Winterland," and it's actually several songs on that record were recorded with vintage Strats. I have a 1960 hardtail and a 1965 burst, right? And so I never take them on the road, but they're nice studio guitars. So I really wanted a guitar that I could consider my vintage Strat, but also feel like my main guitar. So this is really the best of all those worlds for the first time. And the first time Ibanez has put a guitar out that has 3 single coil space pickups in it. So. So it's great for some of my high gain stuff, but you will have heard me use this exact guitar if you saw my Bohemian Rhapsody video where I was. Be here a while. So that's the kind of tones I really love this guitar for. Some of that mild neck pickup, broken, but also handy for. Ish, right? So, so kind of more of a traditional S-style guitar, but with the modern amenities that make it possible for me to play a lot more music. I love the old vintage guitars, but I'm limited in some ways. So this is just a more stable way of getting some of those sounds,
Miklos from Hungary
Ooh.
says, I rarely hear A Night to Remember, the song that made me pick up the guitar again.
Wow.
Would you mind playing a little bit of it?
Sure. I can do that. Thank you for the request. That's a beautiful tune that actually, it was before the Titanic movie came out, before Leonardo and made my wife cry for months, basically. There was a great special on the BBC, but they aired in America, obviously, somewhere in the mid-90s, because this song was on my Your Ecstasy 2 record from 1997. But it was this documentary about the Titanic, and they were interviewing the very elderly folks, but survivors that had been on the ship, so it just really put a face on this well-known tragedy, but then really telling the very personal stories. It was gut-wrenching and historically incredible. And when I was a little kid, I had a very vague memory of watching a movie called A Night to Remember. But all I remember, I was like 5 years old because I was still living in Arizona. But I just had this vivid memory of this beautifully lit up cruise liner, all lit up like it's this way, but it's going this way. It's like, so when I saw that documentary, I was very moved, and I wrote this piece of music, and I thought about that film, and so that's where the title comes from. But I'll give you a little bit of the intro to it. Thanks for checking that tune out. I'm glad that if it inspired you in some way to pick up a guitar, that's awesome, man. That's very cool.
So before we wind down here, we do want to take a minute to thank the folks from TrueFire for letting us invade their YouTube channel.
Thank you, Tommy. Thank you, Allie. Thank you, Brad. All the great folks there. I've been there many times, obviously, to record these programs and have a great time. Any relationship I've ever had with any company or whatever it's been, it's, the first and foremost, you really got to love the people you're working with, and they make it very easy. So shout out to those guys, and I look forward to seeing them again soon, hopefully.
And make sure that as you guys are going out there on Andy's lessons or Josh Smith's lessons or Mimi Fox's lessons or Ariel's lessons, you're looking for those eggs and
am I eligible, by the way? Can I go find Easter eggs?
Hey, that's between you and the TrueFire folks there, Andy. But
make sure my own guitar.
Make sure you're finding those eggs, because there's a ton of cool prizes that folks can win. We got together with them here at the Guitar Sanctuary to put together those prizes. If you saw our video last week, we went over them one by one. Wow. But we chose them all inspired by members of the TrueFire staff that have played here at our venue.
There's been a bunch, right? Yeah.
It has.
That's awesome.
And we wanted to pick gear that's actually stuff that all of those players use.
Cool.
Including, of course, the ATZ 100 guitar.
Right
we've got Eventide H9. There's a Universal Audio aux box. There's a Taylor acoustic guitar. There's an El Capistan for our buddy David Grissom and stuff like that. So it's all stuff that those players actually use. So we want to make sure that as you guys are cruising around out there, you're getting those eggs and things like that. Andy, how about you play us something out? We're so thankful to Andy Timmons for coming here today to come spend some time with you guys and share some of his wisdom and his amazing talent. So we'll look forward to seeing all of you guys out there in virtual land.
Sure, here we go. So. Here we go.